Hello everyone, welcome to another lecture on The Gift of the Magi, a short story by O. Henry. This is one of the most famous short stories written by this writer O. Henry. He's quite famous for the plot twist at the end of his tales, and we'll see what are the techniques that he has used in narrating this beautiful story, The Gift of the Magi. So we'll begin with a short introduction to the author, and then we'll move on to the plot summary, and then finally we'll discuss the major themes in this short story. This is O. Henry. O. Henry is actually not his original name. He was born as William Sidney Porter. And O. Henry is the pen name that he chose when he started writing stories. Pen name is also sometimes referred to as pseudonyms or false names that mostly authors take up when they write stories and they want to keep their real identity hidden, and they'll become popular under this particular pen name. So that's the same case with O. Henry. And he published most of his stories from prison. So that brings us to a few details about his biography. And he is someone who, for the first half of his life and for quite some time, had tried his luck at various jobs. He did not realize that writing would be his breakthrough. So he worked as a cook, as a chef, and mostly as a pharmacist during most of his life. And during his lifetime, he happened to cheat the government, and he was arrested on charges of tax evasion. So that is how he was imprisoned. And while he was in prison, since he didn't have much work to do, he thought of writing stories and short stories. And his friends would get these stories from him when they come to visit him, and then they will publish these stories under the pen name O. Henry. So he really wanted to keep his identity hidden since he's arrested and he's in prison. So maybe that's one of the reasons why he chose this particular pen name. However, when these stories were published, he instantly became so popular. People loved his stories, and he decided that's what his life is going to be about. He's going to be a writer. And there began his successful life as a writer, and he published several short stories with interesting twists and climaxes, as we already discussed. Now, let's think about the title, The Gift of the Magi. Now, who are the Magi and what does it mean? Now, Magi is a plural form of the word magus, meaning wise men. Wise men are the Magi. Simply, it refers to priests or kings or prophets, particularly in Persian countries. And, or in other words, these are men with wisdom. Now, if you place this particular word in its actual context, that is of the Christmas story, which you must be familiar with, which is often narrated during Christmas time, is how three wise men traveled from the east and how they followed a particular star and they came to the manger where Jesus lay. So there, these magi, these wise men, are sometimes considered as kings from the east, kings representing different countries. Some say they are astrologers because they followed a star and then they decided where they should go. Or some say they are just prophets from different parts of the world. However, they all came together and they came to the stable where Jesus was lying, and they presented their gifts to the King of Kings, as they knew that he would be the king. And that's why they have come in search of him. And why are they called wise? Because they brought wise gifts for Jesus. And what these are the gifts that they brought: gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Now, why are these gifts considered as the best gifts to present to Jesus, or the wise choice that they've made, because gold, all of these represent certain other values that you can associate with Jesus Christ. So here, gold represents his kingship. He's going to be the king of the world. And frankincense refers to his divine nature. He's also God. You might know that we use frankincense in various religious ceremonies. So it's related to worship. It suggests his divine nature. And finally, myrrh is a substance that you use during burial or during funeral. And it suggests his coming death. Right? So that's why they are called prophets. They were prophetic in the gifts that they brought. The baby is still a little child, but they were prophetic. They could foresee the future of this little baby and how his crucifixion is going to be a major event in his life, and it has certain implications for the rest of the world as well. So that is why they've brought these gifts, and that's why they are called the wise men. So, are these characters in the story that we are going to study? No, they never figure anywhere in the story. There's not even a mention of Jesus Christ in the story. Then why is it titled The Gift of the Magi? That's what we'll discuss. So we'll first begin with the plot summary of this beautiful story, The Gift of the Magi. It's basically about a couple, a lovely couple named Jim and Della. And certain events that happen in their life and how they overcome some of the struggles that come their way. And the focus is primarily on their response to difficulties. How do they respond to certain difficult situations? And from there, we will move to the spirit of Christmas and why did O. Henry choose this particular title, The Gift of the Magi. Okay, so it begins with a description of the setting, that is Jim's and Della's household. And by the way O. Henry describes, you understand that they are extremely poor, because he describes about the setting, the household, the furniture that they have, and the struggles that they have in paying their rent every month. So these details make us understand that they are not well off, they are poor, they are really struggling to make both ends meet. And there's also a reference to his name, James Dillingham Young. That is his full name, Jim's full name. And maybe Della affectionately calls him Jim. And there's this reference about how the middle name Dillingham has contracted to a mere D. It's just James D. Young now. What does he mean by that? Dillingham family was once a well-known, a well-off family, very rich, who lived a happy life without having to worry about anything else. And they could proudly declare their family name as Dillinghams, the Dillinghams. But right now, situation has changed. Their prospects have come down, and hence, he says, the name has contracted to a mere D. So this is how the story begins, and you find Della in the front room of their house, quite worried. And what is she worried about? And there's this description given in the text. I'll read it out. I quote, "She stood by the window and looked out dully at a grey cat walking a grey fence in a grey background." This is an exact quote taken from the story. And this is how you see how certain writers use these color imageries and literary techniques to convey emotions in the story. This is a seemingly insignificant detail in the story. There's nothing happening there. The writer is simply describing how Della is standing by the window. She is looking at a grey cat walking along a grey fence in a grey background. It doesn't give out any major information to us, but the fact that he uses this color imagery there, that it's all grey, that grey symbolizes dullness, right? Lack of color, suggesting lack of life, or sorrow, moody atmosphere. So this is how O. Henry uses language in the story. It's a beautifully written story, and you can explore further how he uses certain descriptions to convey certain situations, certain emotions of these characters. So that's how you have to interpret that particular line. Now, I already told you Della is not that happy. She's sorrowful, and it's actually Christmas Day. It's the eve of Christmas. It's the 24th of December. And why is she worried? It's Christmas. But you understand, he already let us know that they are poor. And in the West, primarily, they had this habit of exchanging gifts during Christmas time. And it's believed that this tradition began because of the wise men, the Magi, who brought gifts for Jesus on that first Christmas day. And since then, when you celebrate Christmas, to remember that event, you also exchange gifts. So this was a tradition in the West. Maybe Jim and Della used to do that every year. But this time, Della is really sad because she does not have any money to buy gifts for her beloved Jim. So what is she going to do about it? And she counted all the money that she had, and she figured out that it came to a meager $1.87. That's all she has. And she counted all the money. And what could she buy with that? Nothing worthy of Jim, right? She wanted to give the best for her beloved husband. So she thinks hard, and there's the writer O. Henry reveals certain extra information about Jim and Della, about some of their possessions. So this brings us to the idea of their possessions. What do they possess? There was this reference to the money that they had. So what do you understand by possession? He's also making a comment there. Possession is not always material possession. It's not always related to money. And O. Henry makes it very clear for Jim and Della, their most prized possession, a possession that was so close to their heart, was something else. For Della, it was her beautiful hair. Jim loved her beautiful hair, and Della herself adored her beautiful long brown hair. And the other one was Jim's golden watch. Jim had a gold watch. It's not something that they bought. How did it become a possession? How did it become something worthy of being treasured? Because this was a gold watch that he inherited from his father, which his father inherited from his grandfather, and so on. So this was more like a family heirloom, right? So he had this gold watch, which both Jim and Della knew were so precious to both of them. And it's the same case with Della's hair. Now, Della has to make a decision. So, even though she has $1.87, and she could only think of the only possession as her hair, and she wanted to make a decision so that they would get something, that she would get something to present for Jim. And she comes to a decision, that is to cut off her beautiful hair and sell it. So she goes to Madame Safrani's shop and she sells her hair, and she gets $20 in exchange for her beautiful hair. So she was letting go of something that she herself adored, something that she was proud of, something that Jim loved. It was more of a sacrifice that she was making. And still, she was happy that she got this money not for herself, but she could buy a gift for her beloved Jim. So she goes to a shop and she decides to buy a platinum fob chain for Jim's golden watch. She knew that Jim's watch was something that he treasured a lot, and she wanted to buy something that he could attach with the watch. A fob chain is, you might have seen in movies where the watch is connected to a chain, and those days it was not worn on the wrist, but rather the watch was kept inside your coat's pocket, right? So Jim would always look it up, and so that's the way it was. So she wanted to buy a platinum fob chain, and she bought it for Jim. And what happens is, when Della is ready with the gift and Jim comes home. She's quite worried about what Jim is going to tell her because he's going to see her without her beautiful hair for the first time. And she herself considers as a schoolboy, a choir boy. And she feels anxious. And the moment Jim sees her, just as she expected, he looked shocked. And Della thought it's because he's seeing her without her hair. But there's another reason why he was shocked. What happens is Jim comes and Della presents this gift to Jim, and he opens and finds this platinum fork chain which he has to attach to his golden watch. And Jim, just like Della, also had thought of buying a gift for her, which we are not told about, right? The story tells us only about Della's anxieties and how she decides to buy a gift for Jim. And at the same time, in the background, Jim was also going through a similar situation, and he had also come to a decision, more like Della, and he had bought certain combs, certain expensive combs for Della. These were like tortoise shells which were formed into combs. These combs were rimmed with tortoise shells. Why did he buy those gifts? Because once, when maybe they were walking through the streets and Della had adored these combs that she saw in a particular shop, and Jim knew instantly that this is something that she loves and he has to get it for her. And how did he get it? He also may not have had much money left. So he sold his golden watch, his ancestral property, something that both of them treasured a lot. He decided to sell it off so that he could get these gifts which Della loves. And he did that. Just like Della, he also made a sacrifice and he got these gifts for her. So, are these useless gifts? In one sense, these gifts are useless now. Della has no use for these combs, these elaborate combs now. Her hair is so short. What about the platinum fob chain that Della got for Jim? That's also useless because there's no watch now to attach the chain to. Now, what is important is their response to the situation. Towards the end of the story, you see, so this event was what was the plot twist. We never expected it to be like this. We were not told anything about what Jim is going to get for her. But O. Henry drafts the story so well that you understand that it's more of a plot twist. You never expect it. And the way they think about each other, the way they love each other is in the same measure with so much depth. And how do they respond to the situation? Jim says it's fine. It's not a problem. Like, these are material things. Let's get on with our life. You put the lamb chops on the stuff. Let's have a beautiful dinner. And Della is also happy. The fact that they lost something precious or the gifts are now useless for both of them does not bother them at all. Why? Because they are in each other's company. They have each other still. What they lost is a mere material thing. What they truly have is they have already expressed their love for each other, and that was all that mattered to them. So that's the response that makes them equal to the Magi. So O. Henry makes this final statement in the story: "Oh, all who give and receive gifts, such as they are the wisest. Everywhere they are the wisest. They are the Magi." He calls Jim and Della the Magi. And he says they are like representatives of all those people who might be going through difficulties, who might be poor, but still have a pure heart, but still cherish love in its purest form for their fellow beings. They are the ones who are the wisest. It's not about money, it's not about material possessions. It's about these values that the Christmas story tells us about. They are the wisest, they will be the Magi. So that's how he ends the story. And we understand that Jim and Della are therefore the Magi because they brought the best gifts for each other, just like the Magi brought the best suitable gifts for baby Jesus: gold, frankincense, and myrrh, representing who he really is. And similarly, they got the best gifts for each other. They knew what the other one loved. So they are the Magi in that sense, and they expressed their sacrificial love for each other. All that mattered to them was that the other one would be happy, that the other one would be content when they see this gift that they're going to bring for them. Even though it cost them too much, they have to let go of something that is so precious to them. But for the sake of the other, they were willing to lose it because in that process, they are winning the other person's love. They are still together. So that is the sacrificial love that both of them express for each other in this particular story. And that's where they find true happiness. If their happiness depended on material possessions, then if they find once they find that these gifts are useless, they would have been extremely sorrowful. They might have thought, oh, I already lost my precious watch. I already lost my beautiful hair. And these gifts are useless now. They could have spent their Christmas day in tears. But those material possessions did not define their happiness. Their true happiness was rooted in their love for each other. They already understood how the other one feels for them. And that was enough. And that's how they were happy. And they definitely might have had a great Christmas. And this is the spirit of Christmas that O. Henry is presenting to us through the life of this lovely couple, Jim and Della. And you can connect it even to the essence of Christmas, the spirit of Christmas, right in the Christmas story, because the Magi are mentioned. We need to make such correlations to the Christmas story as well. Although this is not mentioned in the story as such, there's no mention about the Magi or Christ. Because of the title, because of the reference to the wise men, we need to make these correlations. So we understand that Christ, when he was born on Christmas Day, he chose to be born in a stable, in a manger, as a son of a poor couple, Mary and Joseph. What does it suggest? He is God himself who has come down as a human being, but he chose to be born in a poor family. If material things determined your happiness, if material possessions determined your self-worth, then God would have been born in a palace, as a true king as the world sees it, with all the luxuries. But you know the Christmas story, how Mary and Joseph were searching for a stable. They didn't even have a home of their own so that Mary would deliver her child. They were knocking at doors, none were opened, and finally they found a stable where the cow and the cattle, the sheep lay. And there Mary gave birth to Jesus. And they were in that stable. They had to run fearing other kings. He decided, he chose to be born as a poor infant. And he represents the true form, the highest form of love, which is again sacrificial love. Christ sacrificed his own life on the cross and thereby exhibited the love of God for every human being, that they will be saved by his death. That is a sacrificial story of love that you find in Christ's life, and this is the same that you find here in the story as well. They also go through difficulties, they also go through sacrifices. But there is an end product, which is true happiness, which is deep love for each other. This is a story about human relationships. It's not a story about the hair or the watch, but it's about love and how relationships thrive when true happiness is the core ingredient of that relationship, and how sacrificial love binds these hearts together. I hope you enjoyed the story. Thank you.